I had my pistol raised when they finally stopped smiling. Two men stood on the other side of my ranch gate, both wearing black vests with HOA cop printed across the chest. Like the words alone gave them ownership of the land behind me. One pointed past my shoulder toward the house. The other rolled a knife in his palm, casual, like we were talking fence repairs instead of threats. Behind them, my cattle lifted their heads. The trespassing keep out sign hung crooked on the gate exactly where it had been for 30 years. I'm asking one last time, the taller one said, finger stabbing the air.
Hand over the deed.
The HOA needs it verified. I didn't lower the gun. I didn't raise my voice either. You're on private property, I said. You crossed a locked gate.
You're armed. You've been warned.
Turn around and leave.
They laughed.
That laugh, easy, confident, told me everything I needed to know. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. To understand why two fake HOA cops thought they could threaten a rancher in his late 50s over a house deed, you need the backstory. My name is Caleb Morgan. I've lived on this land longer than any HOA has existed within 50 miles of it. My father ran cattle here. His father broke this ground with a mule and a plow. The deed is framed on my wall, stamped, sealed, and older than the county road that runs past my fence. I'm just a rancher with a legally owned pistol, a clean record, and a family that sleeps under my roof. That family is why this matters. The HOA showed up 2 years ago, sprouting like a weed from a development down the road that thought views meant control. First came letters, then fines for things they didn't own. Then a demand to verify my deed because my land interfered with future planning. I said no, politely in writing with copies of state law attached. That's when the pressure turned ugly. Late-night drive-bys, men walking my fence line, friendly reminders left on my gate, and then last week, a note slid into my mailbox with no stamp. Turn over the deed or we'll make this difficult for your family. Today, they decided to make good on that. The knife man took a step closer to the gate. You don't want trouble, old man. Things happen out here. Accidents, fires, kids wander. That's when I brought the pistol up to eye level. Not shaking, not yelling, just steady. This is your last warning, I said.
Drop the knife. Back away. Leave.
The pointing man sneered.
You wouldn't shoot.
I wish he'd been right because standing there with my home behind me and two armed strangers threatening my wife and kids, I knew something they didn't. This wasn't about HOA rules. It wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't even about money. This was about intimidation crossing a line it could never uncross. And at that gate on my land, there was no more room to back up. They didn't stop smiling when I warned them again. They leaned into it. Knife man tapped the blade against his palm and took another step, boots crunching on gravel like he owned the place. The other one lifted his chin toward my house, toward the porch where my wife had gone. Quiet, curtain barely moving. You hear that? The taller one said, he's shaking.
I wasn't.
My arms were steady, my sight picture clean. Last warning, I said.
Turn around. Leave now. Kniefemann grinnt wieder.
You won't do a damn thing.
Then he lifted the knife.
Not rushing, not charging. Just enough to show intent. Just enough to make the threat real.
Accidents happen, he said again.
Barnyards, livestock spooked, wives scream loud out here. Something in my chest went cold. I shifted my stance, half a step back, heel planted, weight centered. Years of ranch work had taught me how to stand when things were about to go bad. I kept the muzzle steady, tracked the knife hand, and spoke one last time.
Drop it. They laughed.
The pointing man started to say something else. Probably another threat, maybe a joke, but he never finished the sentence. I fired. The sound cracked across the pasture and sent the cattle bolting. The first round hit the knife man's center mass low and hard. He jerked backward like the ground yanked him, the knife spinning out of his hand. He stayed upright for half a heartbeat.
Shock on his face.
I fired again.
He dropped.
The second man froze, eyes wide, smile gone. He reached for his waistband. That was his mistake. I adjusted, squeezed once more. The shot caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him sideways into the gate. He screamed, collapsed, and tried to crawl, leaving a dark smear on the dust. The air went silent except for my wife's sobs behind me. I didn't move closer.
I didn't advance.
I kept the pistol trained until both men stopped trying to get up. Don't move, I said, hands where I can see them. Knife man wasn't listening anymore. The other one was screaming. Hi. Panicked, begging now. No authority left in his voice, just fear. I backed toward the house without lowering the gun. Call 911, I told my wife. Tell them there's been a shooting.
Trespassers. Self-defense.
She was crying so hard I wasn't sure she heard me. But seconds later, I heard her on the phone. I set the pistol down on the porch rail, stepped away from it, and raised my hands where the cameras on my house could see them. My heart was hammering now. Not panic, just the aftermath catching up. Sirens were already distant, getting closer. Out by the gate, one man lay still. The other was bleeding and whimpering, staring at me like he'd finally realized something important. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was a crime scene, and the story was only just beginning. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The deputies arrived first. 3 cruisers came hard down the dirt road, lights flashing against the trees, gravel spraying as they brake. I stayed exactly where I was, hands raised empty, heart still pounding, but mind clear. I'd already said everything that mattered into the 911 call. My name is Caleb Morgan.
I'm the homeowner.
I fired in self-defense. The weapon is on the porch rail.
I'm unarmed.
They took control fast and clean. One deputy moved past me toward my wife, who had sunk onto the porch steps, shaking so badly she couldn't stand. Another approached the gate with his weapon drawn, eyes locked on the 2 men in black vests labeled HOA cop, now darkened with dust and blood. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, someone said over the radio. Knife man never moved. The other one was still alive, barely whimpering and clutching his shoulder, eyes glassy with shock. He kept trying to talk, but all that came out were broken sounds and apologies that didn't mean anything anymore. Paramedics arrived and went straight to work. One shook his head at the body by the gate. Another called out injuries in a clipped voice: gunshot wound to the shoulder, severe blood loss, possible arterial hit. They loaded the survivor onto a stretcher, strapped him down, and rushed him out under guard. Then came the questions. I told them everything. Slow, exact, and without embellishment. The threats, the knife, the warnings, the gate, the deed demands, the note in the mailbox, the moment they mentioned my wife and kids. The deputies didn't interrupt. They photographed the knife where it had landed, the gate, the sign, the footprints past the locked fence. My security cameras, 6 of them, caught the whole thing from 3 angles. When the sheriff arrived, he pulled me aside. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "But we'll do this by the book."
And they did.
By morning, the truth started to unravel. The 2 men weren't HOA officers at all, just hired muscle with fake vests and borrowed authority. One had an outstanding warrant in another county. The other had been dismissed from a private security firm for violent conduct. The HOA denied everything at first. Then the emails surfaced. Demands for the deed, talk of pressure, language about making examples. By the end of the week, the HOA's board resigned en masse. Their legal counsel quit. The development's accounts were frozen pending investigation.
Civil suits followed.
Criminal charges followed faster. As for me, the district attorney ruled the shooting justified self-defense. No charges, no grandstanding, just the law doing what it's supposed to do. I still wake up early, still check the gate, still walk the fence line at dusk, but my wife sleeps through the night again. And when my kids ask why there are new locks on the gate, I tell them the truth, simple and steady, because this land is ours, and nobody gets to take it by force. And that's how 2 fake HOA cops learned the hard way that threats don't work on a man defending his home, especially when the law, the land, and the truth are all on his side. Because out there, behind a locked gate and a clear warning sign, power doesn't come from a vest or a title. It comes from knowing your rights, standing your ground, and protecting your family when there's nowhere left to retreat.
The end.